we are expecting this important question to appear in the civil services examination in 2021, and it might figure up as an essay question, very important from the point of infrastructure. So it will serve both the objectives. So before we discuss whether the investment in this project is correct or not, we need to take stock of the current situation. We just are out of COVID and we have learned lots and lots of lessons during the last 1 year. And most of us will know that even during this time, the infrastructure projects were going on in a full swing in the country. The targeted, one of the key result areas and one of the key performance indicators for the highway department is number of kilometers constructed per day. And except for a brief period of 1 or 2 weeks, maybe 3 or 4 weeks, the highway projects are going on in full swing, probably because of the nature of the project, because most of these projects are away from the city. And if you look at the number of people within a square unit area, it is very, very low. So which makes a safe distance and all that much more possible. So those things were going on in a full swing. But one thing that we need to understand is various research studies have said that investment in the infrastructure provides 5 times the multiplier effect. There have been lots and lots of researchers. I will give those data in some other video post. But as far as this is concerned, this investment is concerned, many people feel that instead of putting this money on infrastructure, why shouldn't the government do it on improving the hospital infrastructure, etc., etc. We all know that COVID is a passing cloud. We need to be careful, but just for that, we cannot keep on increasing investment in the hospital infrastructure. And now with improvement in the infrastructure, what is also required is you need to increase the number of people working in it. Otherwise, any hospital is nothing but brick, steel and cement without the medical fraternity working. So therefore, we also need to increase the number of fraternity. Their education plays a very, very important. Very much like head of the family is managing the family. He has to take care of all the needs in the family, the requirements of the ladies. Running the house requires the various expenses in terms of kitchen expenses. Your college going kids have expenses, the daughter has expenses, but the head of the family has a limited income within which he needs to judiciously use across all these expenses. So in terms of infrastructure, the government cannot keep on putting money into the hospital infrastructure. They have to judiciously use it for other measures like social welfare. COVID injections are being given free of cost to people. Subsidies need to be given to farmers. Recently, there have been record purchase of wheat in Punjab, and I will be posting another video on that. The education facilities, everything has to go hand in hand. It's not one at the cost of another. The needs are unlimited, but the means to achieve those needs are very, very limited. And that's the challenge of the government. Of course, the opposition has a job of finding fault with everything the government does, but a responsible opposition need to understand that the job of the opposition party, any opposition party, is not to oppose everything that the government does. So from that perspective, we would like to share certain details with you, not just with reference to the Central Vista project, but in general. We are discussing the issue of investment in the infrastructure. Now, as far as COVID is concerned, we have already come out of it. Yes, there is a second wave that is affecting us, and there are signs of abating, and we can see good amount of progress in the coming weeks and months. Now, if you look at the bank deposits, there have been a double-digit growth in the bank deposits compared to the last year, which means a lot of money is flowing into the banking system. But if you look at the non-food credit, that's a matter of serious concern. There is weak demand. The reason is weak demand. Unless people take loans from the banks, unless people take loans from the banks and then spend that money, the economy will not benefit. It's something like circular velocity of money. That is equally important, something that we studied in basic economics, okay, supply and demand. But if you also, if you look at the capacity utilization, it's less than 70% in most of the industries. The PMI, of course, the Purchase Managers Index is also giving some contrary data points, but overall, the demand and consumption has come down. Therefore, it is necessary for the government to invest in sectors which have a higher multiplier. So typically, if you think about multiplier and accelerator, there is no sector other than construction and infrastructure which can provide that much of multiplier. Okay. If you look at the number of aims, talking about the medical infrastructure, we have grown more than 267% from 6 to more than 22. That's the way the infrastructure is going. Infrastructure in medical facilities is not just hospitals. It has to be accompanied by a relative increase in the medical professionals like your doctors, your technicians, your nurses, etc., etc. In the absence of which, if you keep on creating hospitals, it is going to be of no use, because any hospital infrastructure is just brick, steel and house, just like any house or a godown. It becomes a hospital when you have people working in that hospital, and that's exactly where this gains some prominence. Therefore, you need to invest in educational institutions, increase the number of students getting through that. If you look at the data from 1914 onwards, the number of medical colleges have grown 48%. I'm talking about medical schools, approximately from 381 to 565. The undergraduate seats have gone by 58%, which is from 54,000 to approximately 85,000 students. If you look at post-graduation seats, they've also increased from approximately 30,000 seats to 54,000 seats. So what does that mean to the economy as a whole? So these kind of improvements, which the economic improvements, of course, COVID plays a very important role. But COVID or no COVID, these are some of the things that the governments have always been doing in terms of increasing the infrastructure. Today, if we are able to confront COVID, it's not 100%, at least 70-75%. That is because of excellent planning in the past. So we cannot discredit the government from these three things. In fact, if you look at some old facilities, I think most of us are aware that in the last October, it was the first wave of COVID when it was on the process of receding. The government had allocated funds for more than 165 plants to be delivered in 2021, beginning of 2021. It was allocated to all the state governments, but surprisingly, unfortunately, most of the state governments did not use those resources. So it's not a question of financial crunch. It is more a question of governance. It's a governance failure. I'm not talking about any specific state government, but we cannot put all the blame on the central government, because oxygen plant is also part of the infrastructure. In fact, against 165 oxygen plants for which fund was allocated by mid-April 2021, only 33 were installed. So where does the failure lie? We need to introspect. This is exactly where we are coming to. The resources are at the disposal of the state governments, and they have to be used judiciously. Okay, but there have been too much of governance failures, red tapeism, whom to give contracts, lobbies come into play, the politics comes into picture. So a lot has got to do with the state governments also. We're talking about infrastructure. Apart from that, coming back to the Central Vista project that we started with, the basic premise of this Central Vista project, that it is taking away all the resources, is a failed logic. And by the way, some of this data that I've given you, they are all the viewpoints shared by one of the planning member. All that data has been taken from Rajiv Kumar, a planning commission, ex-planning commission member. All those data he has provided. So in fact, the whole project of Central Vista started much before COVID started. Committees were appointed, they sat through it, they discussed it, they slept over it, they did due diligence, and then they came to a decision.